Hi guys, tonight we're stepping into the tie-dyed, patchouli-scented corridors of Vermont in the 1970s. Drop your city and local time in the comments. I love seeing our global ice cream dreamers unite. Now dim the lights, maybe grab a pint from your freezer for that authentic experience, and let's walk together into the sweet, chaotic birth of Ben & Jerry's. You're standing in a converted gas station in Burlington, Vermont, 1978. The smell hits you first. A mixture of vanilla extract, industrial freezer burn, and what you're pretty sure is Ben's gym socks fermenting in the corner. The floor is sticky. Not cute cafe sticky. More like someone spilled a gallon of chocolate syrup and decided mopping was optional sticky. Your name is Ben Cohen, and you've just made a decision that will either change the ice cream world forever, or land you in debt so deep you'll be eating ramen until the year 2000. Spoiler alert, your business plan fits on a napkin, and half of it is illegible because Jerry spilled coffee on it this morning. The equipment surrounding you looks like it was rejected from a 1950s soda fountain. Your ice cream maker sounds like a washing machine having an existential crisis. Listen to the rhythmic churning, metal against metal, as dreams slowly crystallize. The freezer case. You bought it used from a guy named Tony who insisted it mostly works and only sometimes electrocutes people. Jerry walks in, his beard looking like he stuck his finger in an electrical socket, which, given your equipment, might have actually happened. "Dude," he says, holding up a crumpled piece of paper, "I think we forgot to carry the one in our budget calculations." You stare at the numbers. Your total startup capital is $12,000. Your rent is $200 a month. Your ice cream course from Penn State cost you $5 whole, the most comprehensive business education either of you received. Congratulations. You've just invented financial optimism, but here's the thing that keeps you up at night, besides the sugar rush from taste testing. You actually believe this ridiculous plan might work. Not because you understand business. You couldn't read a P&L statement if it came with pictographs and a laugh track. You believe because every scoop you serve feels like a tiny rebellion against corporate America. Your ice cream isn't just frozen dairy, it's chunky, it's weird. It has names like Heath Bar Crunch that make absolutely no marketing sense but somehow make perfect hippie sense. While Haagen-Dazs is playing it safe with vanilla and strawberry, you're throwing cookies, candy bars, and whatever's left in Jerry's lunch into a batch and seeing what happens. The first customer walks in, a college kid who looks like he hasn't showered since the Carter administration. He peers into your freezer case like he's examining ancient artifacts. "What's good?" he asks. You want to say everything, but honesty forces you to admit that yesterday's batch of Chunky Monkey tasted more like Funky Monkey after the freezer had another one of its episodes. Instead, you smile and hand him a spoon. "Try this." He takes a bite of your latest creation, vanilla ice cream with chunks of chocolate chip cookies mixed in. His eyes widen. Not because it's perfect, but because it's perfectly imperfect. It's like someone took childhood comfort food and made it socially acceptable for adults to eat directly from the container at 2 a.m. "Dude," he says, "this is like eating happiness." And that's when you realise something profound. You're not just selling ice cream. You're selling the feeling of being 8 years old and sneaking cookie dough from your mum's mixing bowl. You're selling rebellion against the food industrial complex, one chunky scoop at a time. But as you watch this kid walk out with his cone, happily licking what might be your financial salvation or your delicious downfall, one question gnaws at you like brain freeze. Can two guys who learned everything about ice cream from a correspondence course actually build something that lasts? You're sitting in your shared apartment in 1977, a year before the ice cream dream. The carpet smells like stale pizza and broken dreams, or maybe that's just Jerry's socks. On the coffee table between you sits the most important document in your future empire's history, a Pennsylvania State University correspondence course catalogue, open to page 47. Ice cream making, the course title reads, $5 per person. Jerry looks up from rolling what you hope is just a very lumpy cigarette. $5, that's like 2 pizza slices. You're both 27 college dropouts with the combined business experience of a goldfish and roughly the same attention span. Ben, you've been fired from more jobs than most people apply to. Jerry, your artistic talents are currently being wasted teaching pottery to kids who mostly just want to throw clay at each other. Listen to the rustle of catalogue pages, the sound of destiny being casually flipped through. The decision isn't really a decision. It's more like gravitational pull towards something that sounds infinitely more interesting than your current life trajectory. which, let's be honest, is pointed directly at living in your parents' basements until you're 40. You mail in your $10 check, splitting the cost because you're both broke enough that $5 actually matters. The course materials arrive in a manila envelope that feels suspiciously thin for something that's supposed to teach you an entire industry. Inside, a pamphlet. Not a book, not a manual, not even a decent brochure. A pamphlet. 23 pages of basic ice cream chemistry that looks like it was typed on a typewriter older than both of you combined. The photos are black and white, grainy, and feature equipment you're pretty sure was cutting edge during the Eisenhower administration. Chapter 1. Understanding Butterfat Percentages, you read aloud. Butterfat, Jerry repeats, like he's tasting the word. That sounds almost dirty. You learn about the importance of overrun, the amount of air whipped into ice cream, too little, and it's dense as concrete, too much, and you're basically selling frozen foam at premium prices. The sweet spot is somewhere between substantial and not requiring a jackhammer to scoop. The course teaches you about stabilizers, emulsifiers, and the critical temperature zones that separate smooth ice cream from crystalline disappointment. You discover that ice cream making is actually chemistry disguised as cooking, which would be terrifying if you hadn't both barely passed high school chemistry. But here's what the $5 course doesn't teach you: how to run a business, manage cash flow, deal with suppliers, or explain to your parents why you're abandoning steady employment to pursue frozen dairy dreams. What it does teach you is that ice cream, at its core, is about transformation. You take simple ingredients, cream, sugar, eggs, flavour, and through the magic of controlled freezing, create something that makes people smile involuntarily. Jerry looks up from the pamphlet. Dude, this is actually kind of scientific. Yeah, but fun scientific, you reply. Like if Einstein made desserts instead of theories. You spend the next 3 months practicing in your tiny apartment kitchen with a hand-crank ice cream maker that sounds like it's powered by frustrated hamsters. Your neighbours complain about the noise. Your freezer overflows with experimental batches that range from surprisingly good to what were we thinking? The course final exam is open book, which is good because neither of you actually memorised anything. You both pass with what the certificate generously calls satisfactory completion. Congratulations, you've just invented your entire culinary education. But as you hold those certificates, printed on paper stock that feels like it came from a church newsletter, you realise something profound. You now know exactly enough about ice cream to be dangerous. Not enough to guarantee success, but just enough to convince yourselves that this crazy idea might actually work. The real education, you suspect, is about to begin, and it's going to cost a lot more than $5. You're standing outside an abandoned Mobil gas station on the corner of St. Paul and College Streets in Burlington, Vermont. It's March 1978, and the building looks like it gave up on life sometime during the Nixon administration. The windows are cloudy with years of neglect. There's a suspicious stain on the concrete that might be oil, or might be the dreams of the previous tenant. And the whole structure leans slightly to the left, like it's tired of standing upright. Jerry kicks at some broken glass near the entrance. It has character, he says, which is hippie speak for, this place is a disaster, but rent is cheap. The rent is $200 a month. Your entire net worth is $12,000, cobbled together from savings, a small loan, and what you're pretty sure was your grandmother's guilt money for never visiting her enough. In $1,978, this feels like Jeff Bezos money. In reality, it's about enough to operate for 6 months if you eat nothing but ramen and live on pure optimism. Listen to the wind whistling through the gaps in the doorframe, carrying the scent of possibility and motor oil. You walk inside and immediately question every decision you've made since elementary school. The floor is concrete, cold, and unforgiving. There are mysterious pipes running along the ceiling that you're afraid to touch. The previous tenant left behind a hydraulic lift that you have absolutely no use for but also can't afford to remove. We could use it as a conversation piece, Jerry suggests, examining the lift like it's abstract art. The space is basically a concrete box with delusions of grandeur, no insulation, no real heating system, and electrical wiring that looks like it was installed by someone who learned about electricity from a comic book. The bathroom, and this is generous to call it a bathroom, consists of a toilet, a sink, and what you're pretty sure is black mould forming its own ecosystem in the corner. But here's the thing. It's yours. For $200 a month, this disaster zone with great bones is going to become the birthplace of chunky ice cream revolution. You spend the next month transforming gas station into food service establishment, with the enthusiasm of someone who has never actually transformed anything into anything. You scrub floors with industrial strength everything, paint walls in colours that Jerry insists are earth tones, but look suspiciously like colours that were on sale at the hardware store. The ice cream equipment arrives on a Tuesday morning, delivered by a guy who takes one look at your setup and asks, "Sure you know what you're doing?" The honest answer is no. The answer you give is, absolutely. Your ice cream maker is the electro-freeze batch freezer that sounds like a garbage disposal having an argument with a blender. The freezer display case is older than both of you combined, with a tendency to freeze everything solid one day and turn into a lukewarm soup kitchen the next. Jerry sets up his pottery wheel in the back corner, because apparently this ice cream shop is also going to be an art studio. Because why have one impossible dream when you can have two? The grand opening is set for May 5th, 1978. You've spent weeks perfecting your recipes, or at least getting them to the point where they're edible and unlikely to cause food poisoning. Your flavours include vanilla, classic but boring, chocolate, safe choice, and strawberry, because fruit makes it healthy, right? But you also have something else, the chunky flavours that will eventually make you famous. Vanilla with chocolate chip cookies, chocolate with actual brownie chunks, flavours that require a spoon instead of just a tongue, ice cream that fights back when you try to eat it. The night before opening, you and Jerry sit in your empty shop, surrounded by the smell of fresh paint and industrial cleaning supplies. The neon open sign flickers occasionally, like it's having second thoughts about the whole enterprise. Think anyone will actually come? Jerry asks. You look around at your converted gas station, with its mysterious stains, temperamental equipment, and general aura of what could possibly go wrong. Congratulations, you've just invented retail confidence without any actual reason for confidence. But tomorrow, you'll open those doors and find out if Burlington, Vermont is ready for ice cream that breaks all the rules. The question keeping you awake isn't whether you'll succeed, it's whether you'll survive long enough to find out. You're standing in your converted gas station at 5:47 a.m. on a Tuesday in June 1978. The sun isn't even pretending to be awake yet, but your ice cream machine is having what can only be described as a mechanical nervous breakdown. The sound it's making isn't the gentle churning you've grown accustomed to. It's more like a blender trying to process gravel while having an existential crisis. Jerry stumbles in through the back door, his hair looking like he stuck his finger in an electrical socket. Again. "Dude," he says, staring at the machine. "Is it supposed to sound like that?" The electro-freeze batch freezer, your $3,000 investment that represents roughly half your remaining startup capital, is making a grinding noise that would make a garbage disposal weep with envy. Steam is rising from various mysterious vents, and there's a pudding-like substance oozing from what you're pretty sure is supposed to be a sealed compartment. Listen to the mechanical grinding, metal against metal, like the sound of dreams being slowly processed into reality. You grab the manual, a photocopied pamphlet that looks like it was translated from German by someone who learned English from watching game shows. "Turn power off, wait 30 seconds, pray to the ice cream gods," you read aloud. That last part might not actually be in the manual, but at this point you're open to divine intervention. The problem isn't just mechanical, it's existential. This machine is supposed to be your ticket to ice cream empire glory. Instead, it's currently producing what can only be described as frozen soup with the consistency of wallpaper paste. Your chocolate chip cookie dough batch from yesterday looks like it was made by someone who had never seen chocolate cookies or dough before. You restart the machine. The grinding stops for exactly 12 seconds, long enough for hope to creep back into your heart. Then it resumes with renewed vengeance, now accompanied by what sounds suspiciously like laughter. Mechanical, sarcastic laughter. "Maybe we should call Tony," Jerry suggests, referring to the guy who sold you this temperamental beast. "He said it mostly works." Tony's phone number was written on a napkin, you remind him. A napkin that you used to clean up yesterday's vanilla explosion. The reality of small business ownership is starting to sink in like ice water through cheap boots. You're not just ice cream entrepreneurs, you're unpaid mechanics, amateur electricians and full-time therapists for temperamental equipment, that apparently has mood swings worse than a teenager. Your first batch of customers will arrive in 3 hours expecting smooth, creamy ice cream. What they're going to get is whatever this machine decides to produce, which currently resembles the texture of concrete and the temperature of lukewarm disappointment. But here's the thing about being 27 and foolish enough to believe you can revolutionize frozen desserts. You don't give up when the machine fights back. You negotiate. You bribe it with WD-40. You talk to it like it's a beloved pet that's having a bad day. Jerry starts examining the machine with the intensity of a surgeon, except he's wearing yesterday's tie-dye shirt and smells faintly of patchouli. What if we just hit it? That's not how ice cream machines work. How do you know? Did they cover percussive maintenance in our $5 correspondence course? Congratulations! You've just discovered that running a business involves roughly 10% ice cream making and 90% arguing with inanimate objects that clearly have personal vendettas against your success. The morning rush is coming, and your ice cream machine is currently producing frozen disappointment at a rate that would impress no one. But somehow, as you stand there covered in mystery ice cream machine fluid, you realise this is exactly where you want to be, fighting the good fight, one mechanical breakdown at a time. You're standing in your freezer storage area at 7:23 a.m, holding what was supposed to be a batch of vanilla ice cream. It's not vanilla, it's not even food. It looks like something a small creature might produce after eating too much glue, and it tastes like what you imagine disappointment would taste like if disappointment had a dairy component. The morning customers are starting to line up outside, and through the grimy window you can see them peering in with the kind of expectation that makes your stomach clench like a fist. These are college students who spent their beer money on ice cream. These are families who walked 6 blocks in Vermont summer heat for the promise of something cold and delicious. Jerry emerges from the back room carrying what was supposed to be your chocolate batch. "Houston," he announces, "we have a problem. The chocolate ice cream looks like chocolate in the same way that mud looks like chocolate, which is to say, only if you're very optimistic and possibly colourblind. The texture is somewhere between pudding and spackling paste, with chunks of something floating in it like confused islands. Listen to the distant sounds of customer chatter outside, the gentle murmur of people who still believe in your ability to make edible ice cream. What happened to the strawberry, you ask, though you're not sure you want to know. Jerry holds up a container that might once have been pink. Now it's the colour of regret with swirls of something that looks suspiciously like motor oil. I think it achieved sentience and then immediately chose violence. The reality of the situation hits you like a freezer door to the face. You have exactly 17 minutes before you're supposed to open, and your entire product line currently resembles a collection of science experiments that went horribly, horribly wrong. Your $5 correspondence course didn't cover this scenario. There was no chapter titled "What to do when your ice cream looks like it could be used as industrial adhesive." The pamphlet had cheerful diagrams of perfectly smooth, scoopable ice cream that bore no resemblance to the geological formations currently occupying your freezer. "We could just not open today," Jerry suggests, with the kind of optimism that only comes from never having looked at a business lease agreement. "We can't not open. We have customers. Look." You gesture toward the window where a small crowd has gathered. The kid is pressing his face against the glass with the kind of anticipation normally reserved for Christmas morning. That's when inspiration strikes, or possibly desperation disguised as inspiration. What if we just own it? Own what? The fact that we've created frozen abominations? No, the fact that we're different. Look at this. You hold up a spoon of the chocolate disaster. It's chunky, sure, but chunks can be features, not bugs. This isn't smooth corporate ice cream. This is artisanal, rustic, handmade. Jerry stares at you like you've suggested solving world hunger by teaching cows to fly. Dude, that batch tastes like chocolate that's been through a blender with gravel. Exactly. Textured. Complex. You're warming to the theme now, powered by the kind of desperate creativity that emerges when your entire business plan is melting, literally, in front of you. We're not making ice cream. We're making an experience. The first customer knocks on the door. A college kid with hair longer than Jerry's and a smile that suggests he's been saving up for this moment. You look at your collection of frozen disasters, then at Jerry's panicked expression, then at the kid who's now cupping his hands around his eyes to peer through the window. Congratulations, you've just invented the art of turning quality control failures into marketing features. In 15 minutes, you're going to open those doors and serve ice cream that definitely doesn't meet any traditional definition of ice cream. But sometimes the best businesses aren't built on perfection. They're built on the ability to make disasters look intentional. You're standing behind your makeshift counter at 8 o'clock, AM sharp, your hand hovering over the door lock. Through the glass you can see your first real customers, not friends, not family members obligated to be supportive, but actual strangers who walked here expecting to exchange money for ice cream. The pressure sits on your chest like a frozen concrete block. Jerry positions himself by the ice cream display case, which is currently showcasing what can generously be described as abstract frozen art. The vanilla looks like vanilla that gave up on life. The chocolate resembles chocolate that lost a fight with a construction mixer. The strawberry, well, the strawberry has achieved colours not found in nature. Listen to the gentle hum of the freezer case, working overtime to keep your disasters appropriately cold. Showtime, you whisper, and unlock the door. The first customer, a guy who looks like he majors in philosophy and minors in hemp products, walks in with the kind of confidence that makes you want to hide behind the cash register. He approaches the display case with the reverence of someone entering a temple. "Whoa," he says, examining your frozen offerings. "This is really different, man. You hold your breath. This is it. This is the moment when your ice cream empire either launches or crashes harder than a meteorite made of frozen dairy products." "Different how?" you manage to ask. He points at the chocolate. It's chunky, but not regular chunky. It's like chaos chunky. Like if entropy had a flavour, this would be it. Jerry shoots you a look that clearly says, "Did this guy just compliment our disaster?" "I'll take a scoop of the chaos chocolate," the customer continues, "and some of that angry vanilla." Angry vanilla. You make a mental note. That's actually a pretty good description. The vanilla does look angry, with swirls and chunks that suggest it harboured deep resentments during the freezing process. You scoop the ice cream, which requires more muscle than scooping should. It's dense, resistant, like it's fighting back. But you manage to get a respectable portion into a cone and hand it over. The customer takes a bite, chews thoughtfully, takes another bite. His expression is impossible to read, somewhere between contemplation and mild confusion, like someone trying to solve a riddle written in dairy products. "This is wild," he finally declares. "It's like eating texture, like the flavour is just the opening act, but the real show is what's happening in your mouth. It's like a frozen massage for your tongue." Jerry blinks. Frozen massage? Totally. Hey, do you guys have names for these flavours?" Names. You hadn't thought about names beyond the basic vanilla, chocolate, strawberry. But looking at these creations, these happy accidents that somehow turned into intentional weirdness, you realise they deserve better. The chocolate, you say slowly, is called construction site crunch. The vanilla is attitude adjustment. And the strawberry ... You look at the pink disaster with its mysterious dark swirls. "That's confusion berry." The customer grins. "Perfect. I'll be back tomorrow to try the confusion berry." He pays, tips generously, and walks out, happily working his way through what is objectively terrible ice cream, but somehow, inexplicably, works. Jerry stares after him. "Did we just accidentally invent a new business model?" "I think," you say, watching more customers line up outside. "We just discovered that people don't always want perfect. Sometimes they want interesting. Congratulations, you've just learned that sometimes the best business decisions are the ones you never meant to make." By lunchtime, you've sold out of all 3 flavours, not because they were good in any traditional sense, but because they were memorable, because they were an experience, because in a world of corporate perfection, sometimes people crave authentic weirdness. You're standing in your apartment kitchen at 2 a.m. on a Wednesday night in August 1978. The rest of Burlington is asleep, but you're wide awake, staring at a bowl of chocolate chip cookie dough with the intensity of a scientist on the verge of a breakthrough. Jerry is sprawled on your couch, supposedly helping, but mostly providing commentary that ranges from unhelpful to actively confusing. The conventional wisdom in the ice cream world is clear. Smooth is good, lumps are bad, and anything that requires chewing belongs in a different food category entirely. But conventional wisdom has never met 2 guys who learned everything they know about ice cream from a $5 correspondence course and a healthy disrespect for how things are supposed to work. Listen to the gentle bubbling of the ice cream maker churning away in the corner, a sound that's become as familiar as your own heartbeat. What if, you say, holding a spoonful of cookie dough, we just put this in? Jerry lifts his head from the couch cushion. Put what in where? Cookie dough in the ice cream while it's churning. Dude, that's not how ice cream works. Ice cream is supposed to be smooth. It's supposed to be ice creamy. But you're already moving toward the ice cream maker, spoon in hand, driven by the kind of 2 a.m. logic that has launched 1,000 terrible decisions and occasionally, just occasionally, something brilliant. The vanilla base is churning away, slowly transforming from liquid to soft serve consistency. It looks perfectly normal, perfectly conventional, perfectly boring. You pause at the edge of the machine, cookie dough spoon hovering like you're about to perform surgery. This is either going to be amazing, you announce, or we're about to ruin a perfectly good batch of vanilla. Our vanilla is many things, Jerry points out, but perfectly good isn't one of them. Fair point. Your vanilla has been described by customers as aggressively adequate, and vanilla that's clearly going through some stuff, adding, cookie dough couldn't possibly make it worse. You drop the first spoonful in, the churning mechanism catches it, breaks it apart, distributes the chunks throughout the freezing cream. Then another spoonful, then another. Each addition changes the texture, the visual, the entire personality of what's happening in that machine. It's like watching vanilla get a personality transplant, Jerry observes, now fully engaged in the process. The result is unlike anything you've seen in an ice cream shop. Chunks of cookie dough, some small, some substantial enough to require actual chewing, swirled throughout vanilla ice cream that suddenly seems more interesting, more playful, more chunky. You pull a sample and taste it. The vanilla provides the cooling creaminess, but the cookie dough chunks deliver bursts of sweetness and texture that turn eating ice cream into an adventure. One bite is smooth, the next requires chewing. The one after that surprises you with brown sugar and butter flavours. Holy shit, Jerry says, tasting his own sample. This is like eating childhood memories. Better than that, you realise, taking another bite. This is like eating the process of making childhood memories. It's not just dessert, it's interactive dessert. You're both quiet for a moment, processing what just happened. Not just the flavour, though that's revelatory, but the implications. If you can put cookie dough in ice cream, what else can you add? What other rules are really just suggestions? Congratulations, you've just invented the concept that will eventually make you millionaires, but right now feels like accidentally discovering fire while trying to make toast. By morning, you'll have a name for it. Cookie dough. Simple, descriptive, and completely revolutionary. In a world where ice cream flavours had names like butterbrickle and heavenly hash. You've just created the first flavour that sounds like what it actually is. But more than that, you've discovered your secret weapon. The willingness to put things in ice cream that don't belong there, and the faith that sometimes the best ideas sound ridiculous until you taste them. You're in your shop's tiny back room at 6:30 a.m. on a Thursday, staring at a tray of brownies that Jerry made last night. They're not good brownies. They're dense, slightly burnt around the edges, and have the structural integrity of chocolate-flavoured cardboard. Jerry stands beside you with the expression of someone who's just realised his artistic vision doesn't translate well to baked goods. They're supposed to be fudgy, he explains, poking one with his finger. It makes a sound like tapping wood. I think I may have interpreted fudgy too literally. The logical thing to do would be throw them away and pretend this never happened. The brownies are inedible by any reasonable standard. Too dense to bite through, too dry to swallow, too burnt to taste like anything except disappointment with chocolate. Undertones. But you're looking at these disasters with the same 2 a.m. logic that led to cookie dough, except now it's 6:30 a.m. and you're caffeinated enough to believe anything is possible. Listen to the sound of the morning prep, the gentle hum of the ice cream machine warming up, the distant traffic of early commuters heading to jobs that don't involve wrestling with frozen dairy products. What if we chop them up, you suggest? Jerry looks at you like you've suggested using them as building materials. Chop them up for what? Ice cream, like the cookie dough but with brownies. Dude, these brownies could be used as weapons. They're like chocolate bricks. Exactly. They won't dissolve in the ice cream. They'll stay chunky. The idea is either brilliant or completely insane, but at this point in your ice cream journey, the line between those two categories has become refreshingly blurry. You grab a knife and start hacking at the brownies, They resist like they're made of chocolate-flavoured granite, but eventually yield to sustained violence. The chunks are irregular, some small enough to be pleasant surprises, others large enough to require serious chewing. They're not pretty, they look like chocolate rubble from a construction site, but they're substantial, permanent, impossible to ignore. You start up a batch of vanilla ice cream, and when it reaches the right consistency, you dump in the brownie chunks. The churning mechanism struggles at first. These aren't soft cookie dough pieces that distribute gently. These are chocolate obstacles that clank around the machine like rocky road without the charm. This sounds like we're making ice cream with gravel, Jerry observes. Chocolate gravel, you correct. Premium chocolate gravel. When you pull the first sample, it's unlike anything that's ever existed in the ice cream universe. The vanilla provides a smooth, cold backdrop, but the brownie chunks deliver intense chocolate flavour and a texture that transforms eating ice cream into a mining expedition. Each bite is different. Some smooth, some chunky, some requiring actual jaw work. Jerry tastes it and his expression shifts from skepticism to surprise to something approaching wonder. "This is ridiculous," he says, "and somehow amazing." It's not ice cream anymore, you realise, or it's like chocolate archaeology. You have to excavate the brownies. The first customer to try it is a regular, a graduate student who's been coming in since your second week. She orders a scoop of what you've decided to call Brownie Blastoff and takes her first bite with the casual expectation of normal ice cream. Her chewing slows, stops. She looks at the ice cream like it just spoke to her. "What is this?" she asks. "Brownies, in ice cream. But they're so present, like, I can taste the brownies and the ice cream, but they're not mixed together. They're having a conversation in my mouth. Congratulations, you've just discovered that texture isn't just about mouthfeel. It's about creating multiple experiences within a single bite. Word spreads fast in a college town. By afternoon, you have a line of customers specifically requesting that chunky stuff and the ice cream with the chewy parts. People aren't just buying dessert anymore. They're buying an experience that requires participation. You've accidentally invented interactive ice cream, and suddenly the smooth corporate ice cream at the grocery store seems boring by comparison. You're behind the counter on a Saturday afternoon in September, watching a family debate ice cream choices. The dad is examining your handwritten flavour menu like he's decoding ancient hieroglyphs, while the mum peers into your display case with the expression of someone who's not entirely sure what she's looking at. Their two kids are pressing their faces against the glass, leaving nose prints that you'll clean later with the kind of resignation that comes with accepting that children are basically tiny chaos agents. "What's the difference between this and regular ice cream?" the dad asks, pointing at your chocolate chunk chaos, today's version of yesterday's brownie experiment. Before you can answer, his wife jumps in. "It's like Haagen-Dazs, right? Just chunkier?" Listen to the gentle background chatter of customers, the sounds of a Saturday afternoon in a college town where ice cream decisions carry the weight of weekend entertainment. That's when it hits you. The comparison to Haagen-Dazs isn't flattering, it's limiting. Haagen-Dazs represents everything you're not. Smooth, predictable, corporate, expensive in a way that feels pretentious rather than valuable. Their ice cream comes with names that sound like they were invented by a committee of marketing executives who've never actually eaten ice cream. "No," you hear yourself saying, "it's nothing like Haagen-Dazs." The family looks at you expectantly, waiting for an explanation that you realise you've never articulated before, even to yourself. "Haagen-Dazs is perfect," you continue, warming to a theme you didn't know you had. "Every scoop is identical. It's engineered. It's safe. Our ice cream is..." You gesture at the display case, where your flavours look like they were made by enthusiastic amateurs with access to industrial equipment. "Ours is an adventure," the mum raises an eyebrow. "An adventure? You never know what you're going to get in each bite. That chunk of brownie might be small or it might require serious chewing. The cookie dough might be sweet or it might have a hint of salt. Every scoop is different because we make it in small batches, and small batches have personality." Jerry, who's been listening from the freezer area, adds, "Plus we name our flavours things that actually make sense. Like cookie dough. It's ice cream with cookie dough in it, not dulce de leche sophistication or whatever." The kids, who have been vibrating with sugar anticipation, start chanting cookie dough, with the kind of enthusiasm normally reserved for cartoon characters and sugar-based products. The dad grins. "2 cookie dough cones, 1 chocolate chunk and... He looks at his wife. What's that pink one? Strawberry confusion, you answer. It's strawberry ice cream that's having an identity crisis. Perfect. 1 of those too. As you scoop their order, you realise something important has just happened. You didn't just differentiate yourself from corporate ice cream. You declared war on the concept of perfection itself. Your ice cream isn't trying to be flawless, it's trying to be interesting. The family leaves with their cones, and the kids are already working their way through chunks that require actual effort. They're not just eating ice cream, they're engaging with it, negotiating with it, having a tactile experience that no corporate product could replicate. Did we just invent anti-corporate ice cream? Jerry asks. I think we invented honest ice cream, you reply. Ice cream that doesn't pretend to be anything other than what it is. Congratulations, you've just realised that your biggest competitive advantage isn't quality or price. It's authenticity in a world that's increasingly artificial. By evening, you'll have served dozens of customers who specifically ask for the chunky stuff and the ice cream that's not like regular ice cream. You're not just selling dessert anymore, you're selling a philosophy wrapped in frozen dairy products. You're sitting in your apartment at 11:47 p.m. on a Tuesday in March 1979, staring at a stack of bills that seem to be reproducing when you're not looking. Jerry is sprawled on the floor, surrounded by what appears to be the financial equivalent of a crime scene. Receipts, invoices, bank statements, and a calculator that's been abused beyond its warranty. The numbers don't lie, even when you wish they would. Your ice cream shop is successful by any measure that involves customer satisfaction, local buzz, and the general feeling that you're doing something meaningful. Unfortunately, banks tend to measure success differently. We're making great ice cream, Jerry says, holding up a receipt for vanilla extract. We're making people happy. We're creating community. We're just not making money. Listen to the distant hum of your refrigerator, struggling to keep Jerry's leftover pizza at a safe temperature, much like your business struggling to keep itself financially viable. The problem isn't lack of customers. Burlington has embraced your chunky ice cream revolution with the enthusiasm of a college town discovering something genuinely new. Lines form outside your shop on warm afternoons. People drive from other towns specifically to try your cookie dough. Local newspapers have written articles calling you innovators and the future of frozen desserts. The problem is that you're running your business like a hippie commune instead of an actual business. Your employee handbook, if you had one, would read like a manifesto written by someone who learned economics from reading too many Beatles lyrics. You pay your workers above minimum wage because everyone deserves a living wage. You give free ice cream to anyone who looks sad, hungry, or like they might need cheering up. You donate leftover ice cream to local shelters, contribute to community events, and generally operate under the assumption that good karma will somehow translate into positive cash flow. Maybe we should raise prices, you suggest, though the words feel like betrayal as soon as they leave your mouth. Jerry looks up from his receipt excavation project. Raise prices? Dude, we're already more expensive than the grocery store. We're supposed to be accessible. Ice cream for the people, man. This is the central contradiction of your business philosophy. You want to change the world through ice cream, but changing the world requires staying in business, and staying in business requires making decisions that sometimes conflict with changing the world. Your rent is $200 a month. Your ingredient costs are higher than they should be, because you insist on using real vanilla, real cream, real everything. Your labour costs are higher than industry standard, because you believe people should be paid fairly. Your overhead includes donations, community contributions, and a generous interpretation of what constitutes a legitimate business expense. What if we got investors, Jerry suggests, though he says it like someone suggesting they sacrifice their firstborn to the business gods. Investors would want us to cut costs, use cheaper ingredients, pay workers less, make it more like... You both shudder at the unspoken comparison. Like corporate ice cream, like the thing you defined yourselves against, like everything you swore you'd never become. You realise you're facing the first real test of whether your values can survive contact with reality. Every business reaches this point, the moment when idealism meets mathematics and something has to give. There has to be a third option, you say, though you're not sure what that option might be. Jerry holds up a bank statement. Well, we have about 3 months to figure it out. After that, we're going to be the most ethical unemployed ice cream makers in Vermont. Congratulations! You've just discovered that running a business based on values is exponentially more difficult than running a business based on profit margins. But as you sit there surrounded by financial evidence of your impending doom, you also realise something else. You'd rather fail doing something you believe in than succeed doing something that feels hollow. The question isn't whether you can afford to keep your values, it's whether you can afford to abandon them. You're in your shop at 6 a.m. on a Thursday morning, having what can generously be called a staff meeting. Your entire workforce, all 3 employees, is gathered around the prep table that doubles as your conference room, boardroom, and occasionally your dining room when you're too tired to eat standing up. The agenda is simple. You need to tell people who already don't make enough money that you might not be able to pay them what you do pay them. It's the kind of conversation that would be difficult in any context, but it's especially painful when your business philosophy is built on treating employees like human beings rather than expendable resources. Sarah, your afternoon shift manager, cuts straight to the point. Are we shutting down? Listen to the morning sounds of preparation, the gentle hum of freezers warming up, the distant traffic of people heading to jobs where conversations like this probably don't happen. Not shutting down, Jerry clarifies, just reassessing our financial sustainability model. We're broke, you translate, because euphemisms don't pay rent. Not completely broke, but headed in that direction at a speed that makes bankruptcy look like a reasonable timeline. Mike, your weekend scooper who's been with you since month 2, leans back in his chair. So what are our options? This is where it gets complicated. In a normal business, the options would be clear. Cut wages, reduce hours, lay people off, or some combination of all 3. But you didn't start this business to become another employer who treats workers like line items on a spreadsheet. We could reduce everyone's hours, you suggest. Share the pain equally. Or, Jerry adds, we could all work for reduced wages until we figure out how to increase revenue. Sarah raises her hand like you're in a classroom instead of having a crisis meeting in an ice cream shop. What if we just worked for free? For like a month? As an investment in the business? The suggestion hangs in the air like the smell of waffle cones baking. Sweet but somehow problematic. These people need money. They have rent, groceries, student loans, car payments, all the financial obligations that don't pause for noble business experiments. Nobody's working for free, you say firmly. That's not who we are. Mike nods. But what if we worked for reduced wages and got equity, like ownership stakes? Now you're venturing into territory that your $5 correspondence course definitely didn't cover. Employee ownership sounds wonderfully idealistic and terrifyingly complex in equal measure. How do you value a business that's technically successful but financially precarious? How do you distribute ownership fairly? What happens when someone wants to leave? That's... You begin, then realise you don't know how to finish the sentence. Revolutionary? Insane? Both? It's worth considering, Jerry says. I mean, everyone here has helped build this place. Maybe everyone should benefit if it succeeds. Sarah looks around the prep room that serves as your corporate headquarters. So we'd all be owners? Of this. Technically, you'd be owners of a business that operates out of a converted gas station and specialises in putting unexpected things in ice cream, you clarify. It's not exactly stock options at Google. But there's something appealing about the idea. These people have worked through equipment failures, ingredient disasters, and more than one evening when the ice cream machine achieved what could only be described as sentience and malice. They've helped define what your business means, not just what it sells. Congratulations, you've just stumbled into the concept of profit sharing and employee ownership, which sounds either like the future of ethical business or a recipe for organisational chaos. Let's try it, Mike says. Worst case scenario, we're all unemployed owners of a failed ice cream shop. Best case scenario, ... Best case scenario, Sarah finishes, we're all employed owners of a successful ice cream shop. You look around the table at your 3-person staff meeting that's somehow become a worker cooperative planning session, and realise that once again, you're about to make a business decision that no business textbook would recommend. You're sitting in the office of Preston, Hawthorne and Associates at 2 p.m. on a Friday afternoon in June 1979. The office smells like leather furniture and successful capitalism, with undertones of coffee that costs more per cup than you typically spend on lunch. Across from you, wearing a suit that probably costs more than your monthly revenue, sits Richard Hawthorne III, venture capitalist and professional business optimizer. Jerry shifts uncomfortably in his chair, which is designed more for power projection than actual human comfort. His tie-dyed shirt looks like a tropical bird that wandered into a funeral home. Your own attempt at business attire, a sport coat borrowed from your brother and jeans that you washed specifically for this occasion, feels like a costume for a play you never auditioned for. Listen to the subtle sounds of corporate success, the whisper of central air conditioning, the distant hum of photocopiers, the muffled conversations of people who probably use phrases like synergy without irony. Gentleman, Hawthorne begins, and something about the way he says gentleman suggests he's not entirely convinced that's what you are. You have something special here, unique market positioning, strong local brand recognition, innovative product development. The question is, are you ready to scale? The offer is seductive in its simplicity. $50,000 in immediate capital, business consulting to streamline operations, marketing expertise to expand beyond Burlington, supply chain optimization to reduce ingredient costs, professional management structure to replace what Hawthorne politely calls your informal organizational approach. What would we need to change, you ask, though part of you already knows you don't want to hear the answer. Hawthorne slides a folder across the polished conference table. Primarily operational efficiency improvements, standardized recipes for consistency across multiple locations, reduced labor costs through streamlined staffing models, ingredient sourcing optimization to improve margins. Jerry translates, cheaper ingredients, fewer employees, identical ice cream at every location. Consistent product quality, Hawthorne corrects, with the patient tone of someone explaining basic concepts to children. Predictable customer experience, scalable business model. You flip through the folder, which contains charts, graphs, and projected revenue streams that look impressive and somehow soul-crushing at the same time. Everything is optimized, standardized, efficient. It's a business plan for turning your quirky ice cream shop into a machine for generating predictable profits. What about our current employees? Jerry asks. Existing staff would be evaluated for positions within the expanded structure, Hawthorne explains, though some organizational restructuring would be necessary for optimal efficiency. More translation. Some people would be fired. And the flavors? Our chunky approach? We'd maintain the core brand identity while improving consistency. Standardized chunk sizes, measured distributions, quality control protocols. Translation. Your happy accidents would become engineered products. Your cookie dough would be committee designed, focus group tested, and manufactured to exact specifications that remove any possibility of surprise. You look at Jerry, who's examining the contract like it's written in a language he recognizes but doesn't want to speak. This is everything you thought you wanted. Financial security, professional validation, the chance to turn your ice cream revolution into an actual empire. It's also everything you defined yourselves against. Can we think about it, you ask? Hawthorne smiles with the confidence of someone who knows that businesses facing financial pressure don't usually have the luxury of thinking very long. Of course, but opportunities like this are time-sensitive. Market conditions, competitive factors, investor interest. You understand. Take the deal now, or watch your business slowly collapse under the weight of its own idealism. Walking out of that office, you and Jerry don't talk for 3 blocks. Finally, standing at a bus stop, Jerry breaks the silence. So, he says, sell our souls for financial security, or keep our souls and maybe lose everything? Congratulations, you've just faced the ultimate test of whether your values are luxuries you can afford or principles you're willing to die for. The bus arrives, and you both get on without discussing where you're going. Sometimes the most important business decisions happen when you're not trying to make them. You're standing in your shop at 8:30 p.m. on a Wednesday in September 1979, long after closing, surrounded by empty ice cream containers and the kind of exhaustion that comes from working 14-hour days while questioning every decision you've ever made. The Hawthorne offer sits on your prep counter like a loaded gun, unopened but impossible to ignore. Jerry walks in from the back room carrying tomorrow's batch of cookie dough, which has become your unofficial flagship flavor despite, or perhaps because of, its complete disregard for conventional ice cream wisdom. I've been thinking, he says, which is always a dangerous way for Jerry to begin a conversation. Listen to the evening sounds of Burlington settling down. Distant music from college parties, the occasional car passing, The gentle hum of your freezer cases working overtime to keep tomorrow's dreams frozen. What if we don't have to choose between values and survival, he continues. What if our values could be our survival strategy? You look up from the stack of bills you've been pretending to organise. Explain that like I'm someone who learned business from a correspondence course and mounting desperation. Okay, so we're not just selling ice cream, right? We're selling the idea that business can be different, that you can pay people fairly, use real ingredients, make decisions based on what's right instead of what's profitable. Right, and we're going broke proving that point. But what if going broke proves the opposite point? What if we're failing because we're not committed enough to our values, not because we're too committed? Jerry sets down the cookie dough and pulls up a chair, settling in for what you recognise as one of his philosophical deep dives. These conversations have previously resulted in putting cookie dough in ice cream, converting a gas station into a community gathering place, and at least 3 decisions that your accountant has described as creative financial management. Look around, Jerry continues, gesturing at your shop. People don't come here just for ice cream. They come here because this place feels different, because we're doing something that matters. He's not wrong. Your customer base includes college students who study at your mismatched tables, local families who've made Sunday ice cream runs a tradition, and a growing number of people who seem to come specifically because you're not like other businesses. So, what are you suggesting? What if we made it official? What if we became a business that explicitly exists to prove business can be better? The idea hangs in the air like the smell of waffle cones, appealing but requiring careful consideration. You've been operating on these principles informally, almost accidentally. Making it official would mean committing to a path that's even more financially uncertain than your current precarious situation. Like how? Jerry stands up and starts pacing, which means his brain has moved into full creative mode. 1% of sales to environmental causes, living wages for all employees, only natural ingredients even if they cost more, open books. Everyone knows exactly how the business works, what we make, what we spend. That sounds like a recipe for bankruptcy with extra steps. Or, Jerry says, turning to face you with the kind of intensity normally reserved for religious conversion, it's a recipe for building the kind of business that people want to support, not just as customers, but as community members. You imagine explaining this to Richard Hawthorne III. The conversation would probably involve words like naive, unsustainable, and financially irresponsible, delivered in the patient tone of someone explaining reality to dreamers. But you also imagine explaining the Hawthorne deal to your employees, your customers, the college kids who've made your shop their unofficial study hall. That conversation would involve words like sold out, corporate, and just like everyone else. People are looking for alternatives, Jerry continues. They want to spend money with businesses that share their values. We could be that business, officially. Congratulations, you've just been presented with the radical idea that your values might be your competitive advantage rather than your financial liability. The question isn't whether you can afford to commit fully to your principles. The question is whether you can afford not to. You're hunched over your kitchen table at 1:30 a.m. on a Thursday night, surrounded by newspapers, environmental newsletters, and what Jerry optimistically calls research materials, but looks more like the information gathering phase of a conspiracy theory. The coffee maker gurgles in the background, producing its 4th pot of the evening as you try to figure out how much 1% of your revenue actually amounts to, and whether that number is large enough to matter or small enough to survive. Jerry emerges from your bathroom carrying what appears to be toilet paper, made from recycled tree bark. Did you know that most commercial toilet paper companies clear-cut old-growth forests, he announces, as if this is the kind of information that normal people discover during bathroom breaks. Listen to the gentle sounds of late-night productivity, papers rustling, pencils scratching, the distant hum of your refrigerator working overtime to keep Jerry's experimental ice cream base at optimal temperature. Jerry, we're trying to figure out environmental donations, not revolutionize personal hygiene. It's all connected, man. Everything we buy, everything we use, every dollar we spend, it all has an impact. What if businesses actually took responsibility for that impact? The math you've been wrestling with suddenly seems less abstract. 1% of your current revenue is roughly $47 a month. Not exactly a game-changing donation for most environmental organizations, but significant enough to hurt when you're already operating on margins thinner than your ice cream was supposed to be. But Jerry's latest revelation about toilet paper has triggered a broader realization. Your business makes hundreds of small decisions every day, and each decision either supports the kind of world you want to live in or contributes to the problems you complain about. What if it's not just about donating money, you suggest? What if it's about making every business decision consciously? Jerry looks up from examining the ingredient list on a package of waffle cone mix. Like how? Like this. You grab the waffle cone package. These cones are made with artificial flavouring, high fructose corn syrup, and preservatives that sound like chemistry experiments. What if we found suppliers who make cones with actual ingredients you can pronounce? That'll cost more. Everything that's actually good costs more. Maybe that's the point. You start making a list. Organic milk from local dairies, even if it costs 20% more. Real vanilla extract, even if artificial is cheaper. Suppliers who pay their workers fairly, even if that increases your ingredient costs. Packaging that biodegrades, even if plastic is more convenient. Each decision represents a choice between short-term financial optimization and long-term values alignment. Each decision is a small bet that customers will support businesses that make choices they can feel good about. This is either brilliant or completely insane, Jerry observes, reading over your shoulder. Maybe both. But look, you point at the newspaper article that started this whole conversation about ice cream companies using artificial ingredients to boost profits. Everyone else is racing to the bottom. Cheaper ingredients, lower wages, maximum extraction. What if we race to the top? Race to the top how? Best ingredients, highest wages, most environmental responsibility. What if we became the business that proves you can succeed by doing everything right? Jerry nods slowly, like a proof of concept for conscious capitalism. Exactly. And the 1% for the planet thing isn't just charity, it's advertising. It's telling customers that when they buy our ice cream, they're supporting environmental protection. Their ice cream money becomes environmental action. You imagine the conversation with your customers. Every scoop you buy funds reforestation projects. Your cookie dough habit is helping clean up rivers. Enjoying ice cream while saving the planet is not just dessert, it's activism. Suddenly the financial challenge doesn't seem like a threat to your values. It seems like an opportunity to prove that values can be profitable. Congratulations, you've just invented the concept of social responsibility as a business strategy, though you won't realize how revolutionary this idea is until other companies start copying you 20 years later. By morning, you'll have a business plan that looks nothing like what Richard Hawthorne III would recommend, but feels like something you could build your life around. You're standing on a milk crate behind your shop at 11 a.m. on a Saturday morning in October 1979, addressing what can generously be called a crowd of about 30 people. The audience includes your regular customers, a few curious passers-by, 2 local reporters who probably thought they were covering a grand opening rather than a business philosophy lecture, and Mrs. Henderson from next door who came for the free ice cream samples but stayed for what she'll later describe as the most interesting thing to happen. On this street, since the gas station exploded in '73, Jerry stands beside you holding a hand-painted sign that reads, "Ice cream with a conscience," in letters that look like they were designed by someone who learned calligraphy from watching Sesame Street. Your entire business philosophy is about to be condensed into a 5-minute speech that will either establish you as visionary entrepreneurs or confirm everyone's suspicions that you're just hippies with access to industrial freezers. Listen to the sounds of a Saturday morning in Burlington. Children playing in the distance, cars passing with weekend casualness, the gentle murmur of people gathered for free ice cream and curious about what you're going to say. "We started Ben & Jerry's because we wanted to make great ice cream," you begin, your voice carrying the nervous authority of someone who's never given a public speech but has strong opinions about frozen dairy products. But somewhere along the way, we realised we were accidentally making a statement about what business can be. A few nods from the crowd. Mrs. Henderson takes another sample of cookie dough. Every business makes choices, you continue, gaining confidence. Where to source ingredients, how to treat employees, what to do with profits. Most businesses make these choices based on one question: what's cheapest? We want to make them based on a different question: what's right? Jerry holds up the sign higher, which is probably unnecessary since everyone can already see it. But enthusiasm doesn't always follow logic. So we're making some commitments today. Public commitments. Things we're promising to do even if they cost us more money. You pull out a piece of paper with your handwritten manifesto. the result of 3 weeks of late-night conversations, multiple drafts, and Jerry's insistence that everything be written in language that sounds like humans talking to other humans instead of lawyers talking to robots. First, we'll never use artificial ingredients. Real vanilla, real strawberries, real chocolate. If you can't pronounce it, we won't put it in our ice cream. Scattered applause. Someone shouts, "What about the names of your flavours?" which gets a bigger laugh than it probably deserves. Second, we'll pay every employee a living wage. Not minimum wage, living wage. Enough to actually live on. More applause, particularly from the younger people, in the crowd who probably work jobs that pay minimum wage. Third, 1% of our sales goes to environmental causes. Every scoop you buy helps protect forests, clean rivers, support renewable energy. This gets the biggest response so far. You realise that people actually want to feel good about their purchasing decisions, but most businesses never give them that option. And fourth, open books. Anyone can ask what we make, what we spend, how we make business decisions. Complete transparency. This one generates some murmuring. Financial transparency isn't common in business, particularly not for companies that are barely staying solvent. Jerry steps forward. We're not saying we're perfect. We're saying we're committed to trying to be better, and we want our customers to be partners in that effort. Mrs. Henderson raises her hand. Does this mean the ice cream's going to cost more? You and Jerry exchange a look. This is the question you've been dreading and hoping for. Maybe, you answer honestly. But what if it's worth it? What if paying a little more for ice cream means supporting a business that shares your values? What if your dessert money becomes environmental activism? Plus, Jerry adds, our ice cream already costs more than grocery store ice cream, and people buy it anyway because it's better. This just makes it better in more ways. The crowd seems to process this logic. Premium price for premium product, but now the premium includes values alignment. Congratulations, you've just publicly committed to business practices that every consultant would call financially suicidal, and somehow it feels like the smartest decision you've ever made. After the speech, customers line up not just for ice cream but to ask questions about your commitments, your suppliers, your environmental donations. You've accidentally turned ice cream consumption into a form of ethical expression. You're standing in what used to be your cozy ice cream shop at 7:45 a.m. on a Monday morning in June 1982, but now feels more like the control center of an operation you're not entirely sure you understand anymore. There are delivery trucks outside, their drivers checking clipboards with the efficiency of people who do this for a living. Inside, you have 12 employees instead of 3, industrial equipment that actually works consistently, and a production schedule that looks like something NASA might use to plan moon landings. Jerry walks in carrying a folder thick enough to stop a bullet, which turns out to contain wholesale orders from grocery stores, restaurants, and small shops throughout Vermont and New Hampshire. We have a problem, he announces, which is how most of your conversations start these days. Listen to the sounds of success. Multiple ice cream machines churning simultaneously, the beeping of commercial timers, the chatter of employees who actually know what they're doing because you've had time to train them properly. Good. Problem or bad problem, you ask? Though you've learned that when your business grows from local ice cream shop to regional frozen dessert phenomenon, the distinction between good and bad problems becomes refreshingly irrelevant. We got an order from a distributor in Boston. They want 500 gallons of cookie dough per month. You do quick math. 500 gallons is roughly 10 times your current monthly production of cookie dough. It's more ice cream than you made in your entire first year. It represents the kind of financial success that would have seemed impossible when you were scraping together rent money and praying your equipment wouldn't achieve consciousness and rebel. It's also terrifying. Can we make 500 gallons a month? Jerry flips through his folder. With new equipment, expanded facility, additional staff, revised supply chain management, and probably some form of scheduling that doesn't depend on whether our ice cream machine is having a good day. Maybe. The growth has been organic but relentless. Word spreads about ice cream with chunks in it, made by guys who pay their workers fairly and donate to environmental causes. Food writers discover you. College students graduate and request your ice cream at stores in their new cities. Your environmental donations start getting attention from activist groups who promote you as ice cream with a conscience. But success brings complexity like wet socks bring discomfort. Gradually, then all at once. Here's the thing, Jerry continues, settling into what you recognize as his problem-solving mode. To fill this order, we'd need to triple our production capacity. That means new equipment, bigger facility, more staff. It means becoming different. Different. The word hangs in the air like the smell of waffle cones, appealing but requiring careful consideration. You've spent 4 years building a business that feels authentic, personal, community-focused. You know your employees by name, you know your regular customers' favourite flavours. You can still hand scoop every order if you want to. What if we don't take the order? Jerry looks at you like you've suggested turning down free money, which is essentially what you're doing. It's $50,000 worth of business, per month. That's more than we made in our first 2 years combined. But you're thinking about the conversation you had with Richard Hawthorne III, about scaling and standardization and optimizing everything that made your ice cream special. You're thinking about the difference between growing bigger and growing better. What if taking this order turns us into exactly what we were rebelling against? The question sits between you, like an unwelcome customer who wants to sample every flavour before ordering vanilla. You know the answer intellectually. Growth for its own sake tends to consume the thing that made growth possible in the first place. We could try to do it right, Jerry suggests. Maintain quality, keep our values, just do more of it. Or we could say no and stay true to what we are, and potentially miss the opportunity to prove that ethical business can compete at scale. Congratulations, you've just discovered that success creates its own category of problems, ones that your $5 correspondence course definitely didn't cover. The morning staff starts arriving, cheerful and caffeinated, ready for another day of making ice cream that matters to people. They don't know that the conversation you're having might determine whether their jobs evolve into something completely different or stay exactly as they are. The question isn't whether you can handle the Boston order, the question is whether you can handle it without losing yourselves. You're standing in an empty warehouse in Waterbury, Vermont at 3 p.m. on a Tuesday afternoon in August 1982. The space is cavernous, industrial, and smells like decades of other people's manufacturing dreams. The ceiling stretches up into shadows, crossed with pipes and ductwork that look like the mechanical intestines of a building that digests hope and produces product. Jerry's voice echoes as he talks to the real estate agent, a woman in a power suit who clearly specializes in turning hippie ice cream makers into legitimate business operators. This space could handle your current production volume plus projected growth for the next 5 years, she explains, gesturing at the vast emptiness like she's revealing a cathedral. Listen to the hollow echo of footsteps on concrete, the distant hum of industrial ventilation systems, the sound of dreams being measured in square footage and loading dock access. The Boston distributor deal has become real, concrete, demanding. They want 500 gallons of cookie dough monthly, plus 300 gallons of chocolate fudge brownie, plus whatever other flavours you can develop. The numbers represent financial security that would have seemed impossible during your gas station days, but they also represent a fundamental transformation of what you do and how you do it. The previous tenant manufactured electronic components, the real estate agent continues. Very clean operation, minimal modification needed for food production. Electronic components. You imagine rows of workers assembling circuit boards with the same mechanical precision that mass-produced ice cream requires. Measured ingredients, standardized procedures, quality control protocols that ensure every batch is identical to the last. Jerry catches your expression. It doesn't have to be soulless, he says, though he sounds like he's trying to convince himself as much as you. Doesn't it, you ask? Look at this place. It's designed for efficiency, not creativity. It's built for workers, not craftspeople. How do you make ice cream with personality in a space that was designed to eliminate personality? The real estate agent, sensing your hesitation, switches tactics. Think of the jobs you'll create, the economic impact on the community, the opportunity to bring your products to people who've never had access to quality artisanal ice cream. She's not wrong. The factory would employ 40 people, 40 families with steady paychecks, health insurance, the kind of employment stability that your current operation can't provide. Your 3-person staff could become department managers. Your hand-scooped ice cream could reach thousands of people instead of hundreds. But you're also thinking about Mrs. Henderson, who stops by every Saturday for a scoop of strawberry confusion and always asks about your environmental donations. You're thinking about the college kids who use your shop as a study hall, who know your staff by name, who've made your place part of their community. What about the shop? Jerry asks. Do we keep it open? The real estate agent's smile becomes professionally optimistic. You could certainly maintain a retail presence. Many manufacturers run small showroom operations. A showroom? Your converted gas station, with its mismatched furniture and hand-painted signs and the smell of waffle cones, reduced to a showroom for products manufactured in an industrial warehouse. You walk toward what would be the production line, imagining conveyor belts carrying containers of cookie dough, past quality control stations staffed by workers in hairnets and lab coats. It would be efficient. It would be consistent. It would produce ice cream that tastes exactly like your ice cream, made according to your recipes, meeting your standards. It would also be ice cream made by people who never talk to customers, never hear someone taste cookie dough for the first time, never participate in the daily miracle of turning raw ingredients into something that makes people smile involuntarily. I need to think about this, you tell the real estate agent. She nods with the patience of someone who's guided many entrepreneurs through this particular crisis of conscience. Of course, but the space won't be available indefinitely. Growth opportunities like this don't wait for perfect timing. Outside, walking back to your car, Jerry is quiet for several blocks. Finally, he speaks. What if we're being precious about this? What if staying small isn't noble, it's just limiting? Or what if growing big isn't evolution, it's extinction? You both know successful companies that grew themselves out of their original purpose. You also know failed companies that refuse to adapt to opportunities. The trick is distinguishing between adaptation and capitulation. Congratulations, you've just discovered that the biggest threat to your business might be its own success. That evening, you'll stand in your original shop, watching customers enjoy ice cream scooped by hand from batches made that morning, and wonder whether preserving this experience is worth turning down the chance to share it with thousands more people. You're sitting in your shop at 11:30 p.m. on a Friday night in September 1982, long after closing, with the Boston distributor contract spread across your prep table, like evidence in a case you're trying to solve. Jerry sits across from you, occasionally making notes on a legal pad that mostly contains doodles of ice cream cones and question marks. The shop feels different in the silence, more intimate, more honest, like a friend who only tells you the truth when no one else is listening. The deadline is Monday. Sign the contract and commit to industrial scale production, or decline and wonder forever whether you chose authenticity over impact, principles over progress. Listen to the gentle hum of your freezer cases, working through the night to keep tomorrow's dreams properly chilled, the distant sounds of Burlington settling into weekend quiet. Let's run through this one more time, Jerry says, though you've already discussed every angle until the angles have angles. Pro: financial security for the business and our employees. Con: fundamental change in how we operate. Pro: reaching thousands more people with our products and our message. Con: potentially losing what makes our products and our message meaningful. You've spent the week visiting other companies that made similar growth decisions. Some thrived, maintaining their values while expanding their impact. Others became hollow versions of their former selves, operationally successful but spiritually bankrupt. The difference, you've realized, isn't in the decision itself, but in how the decision gets implemented. What if there's a third option, you suggest, though you're not sure what that option might be? Third option, how? You stand up and walk to your freezer display, looking at the handwritten labels for flavors like cookie dough, chocolate fudge brownie, and Heath Bar Crunch. Flavors that exist because you were willing to put things in ice cream that didn't belong there. What if we take the contract but do it our way? What if we scale up without selling out? Jerry looks skeptical. Meaning what exactly? Meaning we find a space that's bigger but not soulless. We hire more people but maintain our culture. We produce more ice cream but keep the batches small enough to maintain quality and personality. That sounds expensive and complicated. Everything worthwhile is expensive and complicated. Cheap and simple is how you get corporate ice cream. You're warming to the idea now, powered by the same 2 AM logic that led to cookie dough, but tempered by 4 years of business experience. We could create a facility that's part factory, part workshop, industrial capacity but artisan approach, big enough to serve the distributor, but small enough to maintain our identity. And if it doesn't work, then we learn something valuable about the limits of compromise. Jerry starts sketching on his legal pad, drawing what looks like a factory shop hybrid. We'd need more capital, more expertise, more everything. But we'd also have more impact, more jobs, more opportunity to prove that business can be different. The contract sits between you, waiting for a signature that will commit you to a path you're not entirely sure you can navigate successfully. But you're also not sure you can live with not trying. There's something else, you realise. If we don't take this opportunity, someone else will. Someone who might not care about fair wages or environmental responsibility or community impact. Someone who'll make knockoff chunky ice cream without any of the values that made our chunky ice cream meaningful. So we're not just deciding whether to grow, we're deciding whether growth happens with our values or without them. Exactly. The market for chunky, innovative ice cream exists now because you created it. Other companies are already copying your flavors, your marketing, your aesthetic. The question is whether you want to compete in the market you created or watch others dominate it. I think, you say slowly, we take the contract, but we do it as an experiment in conscious growth. Jerry nods. Growth that serves our mission instead of consuming it. You pick up the pen, then pause. If this goes wrong, if we turn into everything we swore we'd never become, promise me we'll have the courage to walk away from our own success. Promise. And if it goes right? If it goes right, we prove that you can build a big business with a small business soul. Congratulations, you've just committed to the most dangerous experiment in business, trying to scale values along with operations. You sign the contract at 11:47 p.m. on a Friday night in a converted gas station, surrounded by the smell of waffle cones and the weight of decisions that will define not just your business, but your beliefs about what business can be. You're standing in the boardroom of Unilever's headquarters in London on a Tuesday morning in April 2000, surrounded by executives in identical suits discussing the acquisition of your company. The numbers on the whiteboard represent more money than you ever imagined when you were splitting the cost of a $5 ice cream course. $326 million for a business that started with $12,000 and a broken-down ice cream machine that sounded like it was plotting revenge. Jerry isn't here. He stepped back from day-to-day operations years ago, citing exhaustion and a desire to focus on activism without the distraction of quarterly reports. You understand. Building a business that stays true to its values while growing to national scale is like trying to maintain a meditation practice while running a marathon. Theoretically possible, but practically exhausting. Listen to the subtle sounds of corporate power, the whisper of air conditioning, the gentle buzz of fluorescent lighting, the distant hum of hundreds of people making decisions that affect thousands of other people's lives. The Unilever executives are polite, professional, and utterly convinced that they understand your business better than you do. They speak in corporate language about brand optimization, market penetration, and synergistic value creation. Phrases that sound impressive and mean very little. The Ben & Jerry's brand has incredible equity, explains Margaret, the lead acquisition specialist. Our global distribution network could triple your market reach within 18 months. She's not wrong. Unilever can put your ice cream in stores across Europe, Asia, markets you never dreamed of reaching. They can provide resources, expertise, capital for expansion that would take you decades to develop independently. They can also change everything that made Ben & Jerry's worth buying in the first place. What about our social mission, you ask? The environmental donations, the activism, the commitment to social justice. Margaret's smile becomes professionally reassuring. Absolutely. We're committed to maintaining the brand's authentic voice and values-based positioning. That's not what I asked. The room becomes quieter. You realise you've just violated a rule of corporate negotiations. You're supposed to pretend that everyone wants the same things for the same reasons. Our concern, you continue, is that social responsibility becomes a marketing strategy instead of a genuine commitment. That environmental activism becomes greenwashing, that our company's soul becomes a brand position. Richard, the financial analyst, jumps in. The acquisition includes provisions for maintaining current donation levels and community involvement programs. For how long? Well, business conditions change, market demands evolve. We'd need flexibility to adapt to competitive pressures. Translation: they'll maintain your values as long as those values help profitability and abandon them the moment they don't. You think about the thousands of employees whose jobs depend on this decision. You think about the suppliers, the distributors, the communities that have grown around Ben & Jerry's operations. You think about the customers who buy your ice cream not just because it tastes good, but because it represents something they believe in. You also think about what happens if you don't sell. Independent ice cream companies are struggling against corporate consolidation. Your competitors have been acquired by massive food conglomerates with unlimited resources for marketing, distribution, product development. Staying independent might mean watching your company slowly become irrelevant. There's something you need to understand, you tell the room. Ben & Jerry's isn't just a business, it's a proof of concept. It's evidence that companies can succeed while doing the right thing. If you buy us and turn us into just another corporate brand, you don't just kill our company. You kill the idea that business can be different. Margaret nods with the kind of understanding that doesn't actually understand anything. We appreciate your passion. It's part of what makes the brand so valuable. That's when you realize the fundamental disconnect. They see your values as a marketable asset. You see them as the reason the asset exists in the first place. Congratulations. You've just discovered that the most successful social businesses eventually face a choice: sell their souls for global impact or maintain their integrity for local influence. The meeting ends with handshakes and promises to consider everyone's concerns. But you know the decision has already been made by market forces and financial pressures, and the simple reality that mission-driven companies can't compete forever against profit-optimized corporations, unless they become profit-optimized corporations themselves. You're standing at a podium in the grand ballroom of the Sheraton Burlington Hotel at 10 a.m. on a Thursday morning in April 2000, looking out at 300 shareholders who hold the future of your company in their collective hands. These aren't Wall Street investors in expensive suits. They're employees, customers, community members, local supporters who believed in Ben & Jerry's mission enough to buy stock when you went public in 1984. The ballroom buzzes with nervous energy. People clutch proxy statements and annual reports, whispering to each other like jurors trying to reach a verdict in a case where every outcome feels like a compromise. Jerry sits in the front row, looking like someone who's watching his favourite restaurant get turned into a chain franchise. Listen to the sounds of democracy in action. Papers rustling, quiet conversations, the occasional cough that echoes in the formal space, the gentle hum of people wrestling with decisions they never thought they'd have to make. Before we vote on the Unilever acquisition, you begin, your voice carrying across a room that feels too large and too formal for what Ben & Jerry's has always been. I want to talk about what this decision really means. The acquisition has been presented as a business necessity. Ben & Jerry's needs capital to compete against Häagen-Dazs, which is owned by Nestlé. You need global distribution to match Breyers, which is owned by Unilever. You need corporate resources to develop new products at the pace required by modern retail. But you also know that accepting these necessities means accepting the system that created them. A system where independent companies eventually get absorbed by corporate giants, where mission-driven businesses become subsidiaries of profit-maximised conglomerates, where authentic brands get managed by committees who've never met a customer. 15 years ago, you continue, we took this company public because we needed capital to grow. We sold shares to our community because we believed our community should benefit from our success. Today, that same community gets to decide what success means. A hand goes up in the middle of the room, Sarah Mitchell, who's worked in your Waterbury facility for 8 years. What happens to our jobs if we vote no? It's the question that haunts every part of this decision. Rejecting Unilever might preserve your independence, but it might also doom your company to slow decline in an increasingly consolidated industry. Your employees, many of whom own company stock, face a choice between certain short-term financial gain and uncertain long-term independence. Honestly, I don't know. Staying independent means fighting bigger, better-funded competitors without the resources they have. We might innovate our way to continued success, or we might struggle to stay relevant. What I do know is that selling means becoming something different than what we are. Another hand, Tom Rodriguez, a local business owner who's been serving Ben & Jerry's in his restaurant since 1985. But if Unilever maintains the brand, maintains the flavours, maintains the social mission, what's really changing? Everything and nothing, you answer. The ice cream might taste the same, the donations might continue, the activism might persist, but the decisions will be made by people who see those things as brand strategies instead of core beliefs. Jerry stands up. Can I add something? The room goes quiet. Everyone knows Jerry's been increasingly uncomfortable with the commercial success of what started as a fun experiment in frozen dairy products. When we started this company, Jerry says, we had no idea what we were doing. We just wanted to make ice cream that didn't suck and treat people fairly. The fact that it became successful was almost accidental. The fact that it became meaningful was completely accidental. He pauses, looking around the room at faces that represent 15 years of shared effort, shared values, shared belief that business could be different. What I've learned is that the moment you start optimizing a mission-driven business for financial performance instead of mission performance, you lose the thing that made it worth optimizing in the first place. You can't maintain authenticity as a business strategy. You can only maintain it as a way of life. The room is completely silent now. These aren't abstract corporate governance decisions anymore. They're personal choices about what kind of world people want to live in, what kind of companies they want to support, what kind of compromises they're willing to accept. The vote isn't really about money, you realise aloud. It's about whether we believe independent, mission-driven businesses can survive in the modern economy. If we vote to sell, we're essentially admitting they can't. Margaret Chen, a college student who owns 10 shares she bought with birthday money, raises her hand. But what if they can't? What if this is just how capitalism works? Everything eventually gets absorbed by bigger things. Then at least we'll know we tried, and maybe our trying will inspire other people to try harder, to last longer, to prove that businesses can be different. Congratulations! You've just discovered that sometimes the most important business decisions aren't about business at all. They're about the kind of society business creates. The vote begins at 10:47 a.m. By 11:15 a.m., you'll know whether Ben & Jerry's remains an independent proof of concept for conscious capitalism, or becomes a subsidiary case study in how mission-driven brands get absorbed by profit-maximised corporations. You're sitting in your original shop at 2:30 p.m. on the same Thursday afternoon. The acquisition vote now a matter of public record. 57% in favour. The shareholders chose financial certainty over idealistic uncertainty. $43.60 per share over the unknown future of independent operation. Jerry sits across from you at the same prep table, where you once signed the Boston distributor contract, both of you working through pints of cookie dough with the methodical dedication of people processing the end of an era. The afternoon sun streams through windows that still need cleaning, illuminating dust motes and the hand-painted signs that will soon become artifacts of authentic brand heritage managed by corporate marketing departments. Outside, Burlington continues its daily rhythm, unaware that one of its defining businesses just voted itself into corporate absorption. Listen to the familiar sounds of your original shop, the gentle hum of freezer cases, the distant chatter of customers who don't yet know their ice cream will soon be manufactured according to corporate protocols, the soft bubble of the machine that's been making waffle cones since 1982. So, Jerry says, scraping the bottom of his pint with the kind of concentration normally reserved for important documents. We built something beautiful, and then we sold it to people who think beauty is a marketing category. We built something that survived long enough to prove it could work, you correct. The fact that it couldn't survive forever doesn't mean it failed. It means the system isn't designed for things like us. The phone has been ringing all afternoon. Reporters wanting comments about the acquisition, employees asking about their futures, customers expressing everything from congratulations to betrayal. The local paper is already working on a story titled The End of an Era, as if Ben & Jerry's were a historical period rather than an ongoing business. But you're thinking about something else. The thousands of employees who'll keep their jobs because of the acquisition. The millions of customers who'll continue to have access to chunky, innovative ice cream. The environmental causes that will continue receiving donations, even if those donations become corporate philanthropy instead of grassroots activism. Maybe, you suggest, the point was never to last forever. Maybe the point was to prove it was possible, and then inspire other people to do it better. Jerry looks up from his ice cream. Archaeology. You think other people will learn from what we did? I think we changed the conversation. Before Ben & Jerry's, business ethics meant don't do anything illegal. After Ben & Jerry's, people expect companies to have values, to take stands, to contribute to causes. We made social responsibility a competitive advantage. And now, Unilever gets to capitalise on that competitive advantage while forgetting why it exists. True. But that's also how change works. Pioneers create new territories, Settlers develop them, corporations industrialize them. The fact that your innovation becomes mainstream doesn't diminish the innovation. It validates it. What are you going to do now? Jerry asks. It's a question you've been avoiding. At 59, you're too young to retire and too identified with Ben & Jerry's to easily start something new. You could stay with Unilever as a brand ambassador, maintaining the founder's credibility while corporate executives make the actual decisions. You could consult with other mission-driven businesses, helping them navigate the challenges you've just experienced. You could write a book, give speeches, become a professional example of conscious capitalism. Or you could start over. I've been thinking, you say slowly, about all the things we never got to try, all the experiments we couldn't afford to risk when we had employees and shareholders and quarterly reports to consider. Like what? Like what happens when you build a business that can't be sold, that's structured specifically to remain independent and mission-focused, that prioritizes purpose over profit from day one and never compromises. Jerry grins for the first time all day. That sounds expensive and complicated. Everything worthwhile is expensive and complicated. The afternoon crowd is starting to arrive. College students, families, locals who've made Ben & Jerry's part of their weekly routine. They order their usual flavours from staff who know their names, pay for ice cream that still tastes exactly like it did before the acquisition vote, and settle at tables that haven't changed since 1978. For them, nothing has changed yet. The ice cream is still chunky, the prices are still reasonable, the experience is still authentic. The fact that their next cone will be manufactured according to corporate efficiency protocols instead of artisan inspiration is invisible to them. But you can feel the difference. It's subtle, but undeniable. The shift from creating something because you believe in it to maintaining something because it's financially valuable. You know what the strangest part is? You realise. We succeeded beyond our wildest dreams, and somehow that success is exactly what killed us. Jerry nods. We wanted to prove that business could be different. We proved it so well that corporate America bought us. Congratulations. You've just learned that the ultimate validation of a revolutionary idea is its absorption by the system it was designed to revolutionize. Outside, Burlington continues its daily life, shaped in small but permanent ways by the ice cream company that proved business could be both profitable and principled, at least until it became too profitable to remain principled. The legacy isn't the acquisition. The legacy is the conversation, the thousands of businesses inspired to try conscious capitalism, the millions of consumers who expect companies to have values, the fundamental shift in how business success gets measured. Ben & Jerry's changed what people expect from companies, which changed how companies behave, which changed the world in ways too small to measure but too significant to ignore. That's not the ending you wanted, but it might be the ending that matters most. Would you have voted to sell Ben & Jerry's to Unilever, or would you have chosen uncertain independence over corporate absorption? Comment below and let us know where you stand on the eternal question of whether mission-driven businesses can survive in a profit-maximised world.